Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here. This is the 24-hour Bible study, Coach Les and Sujata Against All Odds video podcast, delivered to you on 9 different platforms all around the world. And to tell you a little bit about my co-host, Sujata has accumulated a wealth of experiences during her life, leading her to insights and knowledge that cannot be coached or taught in a class. She is a mother, a wife, a journalist, a consultant, an activist, a leader, and businesswoman domestically and internationally. In sharing her story, Sujata strives to provide readers of all backgrounds in any part of the world with real-life examples on how to deal with the unpredictable nature of everyday life. And I am Coach Les. I'm an integrity coach here in Minnesota, in the middle and what they call the middle of the Midwest in the United States. And Sujata is on the other side of the world in Singapore. So we are encapsulating the world and bringing to you knowledge from around the world. And we also have a beautiful, what I would call helpful staff up on stage of moderators in Clubhouse that are filled with wisdom, that are just dying to answer our fun questions about integrity and relationships. And one of the things I just want to start off with, because sharing quotes every once in a while is a really fun thing to do. My quote that I want to share with you today is, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar. Woo! And so with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Sujata and have her share her experience about yesterday and what it was like in the podcast yesterday. Because we had a blast in the podcast yesterday. And I would love to hear her day later experience. Because one thing that I know is the day after experience is always a very powerful experience. And with that, I hand the mic to Sujata.
Thank you, Coach Les. For so many things, if I start off, then there'll be a long list of thank yous. So I'll just say thank you for all the things that you do. And yesterday, there was this share about after God, then, the spouse is the most important, something like that, right?
Yes,
And,
faith, family, and business.
yeah, well, I was pondering upon that if people really followed it, then it would be contradictory to the topic what we are talking about, because that is not what happens in real life.
Say more about that.
Well, in my life, I have seen the tussle between, in most marriages, in most households, in most societies, and in a lot of cultures, I would say, where the spouse doesn't even count. Forget about being most important after God, or after faith. It's just not there. So, what do? I mean, first you have parents, then you have society, then you have everything else under the sun, but your spouse is there to perform duties, to compromise, as we were talking yesterday, one-sidedly, and not ever question the other half. Then what about you coming halfway or compromising? Nothing. It can be from basic mundane things like, what to cook, what to eat, what to say, to finances, joint finances. Even now, there are spouses who have nothing to do with the finances, are kept out of properties, are kept out of everything. And yeah, so I was just wondering
You were wondering about what?
that it doesn't, since yesterday everybody was saying after faith it's the spouse or the family or the significant other half. That doesn't seem to be what I have been seeing all my life. So I was wondering from where that came from, and maybe it's there in some part of the world but not there everywhere.
Well, I know this. What I find very interesting is that some of the Aboriginal tribes, the lost, what they call forgotten tribes of the world, the Amazon and some of these places that have never been impacted by quote unquote modern culture, somehow manage to revere women, and they are treated, with a reverence. And usually there is one of the quote unquote grandmas that is the matron of the tribe, that wisdom is sought from. And one of the things that I realized in recently in doing my John Maxwell leadership Bible on in the Zig Ziglar rooms a few weeks ago, we started right at the very beginning with Genesis. And John Maxwell talks about being born to lead. And in Genesis 1, verses 26 to 31, it says, "You and I were born to lead." Take a look at the 5 observations based on Genesis 1:26 to 31 that suggest our God-given leadership potential. Now, we scoot down a couple here, and it said, God commanded both male and female to rule. Both men and women have been given the ability and authority to lead. Leadership is not gender specific. Now, what I find so empowering and so cool about this on First Cut is, hallelujah. See, it's written. It's written right there in the Bible. Now, what shocks me and leads me to great dismay is that mankind screwed this up royally over the past, I don't know, 3 or 4,000 years, according to however old the Bible is, because this is right at near the beginning of Genesis. And we've spent the last few thousand years trying to sort out whatever man did to mess it up, because it's only now that in certain countries where women are starting to get their power back. And it's still a fight, and it's still a fight for equality. So that reading that verse a few weeks ago really took me aback and said, people say we're trying to create something new. Are you kidding? We're trying to fix something that was broken. So in the world of integrity of relationships and what we've been saying and what we were creating inside of this room yesterday, and I'll read how we wrote this in there. We said, men and their relationships as husbands and significant others, sharing the areas of training and development that are pertinent to today's business, family, faith, and speaking about it through integrity. What this jumps right out and says to me is that we're trying to restore the integrity of thousands of years ago.
That's right.
I don't know. Somebody just flashed their mic. I'm sorry, I didn't see who it was. Go ahead, Alyssa. Go ahead.
I know what you're talking about. However, just from like studies and schooling and what I've observed, aren't there like different like say that Hispanic community, they really I don't know if it's the fact they just cherish their grandmother status as being very close in nature with the immediate family, or is it they look at her as like a matriarch. Also in the African American community, doesn't she take kind of like a higher matriarch like figure, or it seems that she has more of a say than most people in I don't know, that's what I've been observed, and I remember being taught in nursing school about ethnicities and stuff, but I could be totally wrong. So
no, yeah, you are. Yeah, they seem to have managed that conversation pretty well, as well. So it seems that the Western culture and the Western world have seemed to come down on that conversation the most. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good to hear it in words spoken because it certainly seems that way.
Yeah. Jeanette, what are your thoughts?
A lot. Think about how women have evolved in the U.S. They call it the Western, right, civilization. Remember, women didn't work until World War II, and they had to fill in for the men because the men were all at war. And so when you look at from the 50s forward, how fast women have evolved, they went to the workforce, and they've been growing ever since. And when you compare that to how men have evolved, look at that comparison and see what questions you come out of that. Yes, there are different cultures, but in the Western, in the United States, that's what happened to women. When you look at from World War II forward, I went to my high school and looking at the yearbooks from the 40s. I asked my principal, was this an all-girls school? He said, no, everybody went to war. All that was were the women, and they went to work. And so they took on different roles. They made the ships, they made the planes. How women evolved in the U.S., the different cultures probably went through different evolutions of women as West.
Jeanette, you just muted yourself.
Yes, I got it. I got to have my back. I haven't read.
Yeah, you're coming in and out a little bit, but I think we were still able to hear.
Better now. Try it.
Go ahead and try now, Jeanette. All right, well, so she must be even further out now. And let's see if Michael wants to come up and share. All right, well, with that, we'll kind of jump into the part of the topic that I thought would be another good place for us to go today is when we look at when men do stay home to look after the kids because their income is less than their wife's, the flack they get. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that several years ago, when I was working for a job transition support group, I came up with an idea, and this is probably back in the mid 2000s, actually, early 2000s. I said, you know what? When women are filling out a resume, instead of putting down a big gap where they have their children and they're at home as a stay-at-home mom, I said, I think we come up with a way to label what women are doing by having them own a title and a name at home. And because for me, having a child is a full-time job. In fact, it's probably more than a full-time job, because guess what? You got to stay awake. They wake you up, you get maybe 1 or 2 hours of sleep, but they wake you up because they want attention. They need food. They need clothing. They need warmth. They need whatever they can get. And so when I saw this, I thought, you know what? Why don't we look at creating a name and a category? And, did a few trials and errors. I don't know what necessarily is the most successful, but what I did do is I put in there, I said, write in urban housewife. And then we described everything that they did, and we put it in a business model, i.e., now I'm suddenly spacing out, but looking at planner, event planner, organizational director, uses time efficiently, great organizational skills, handling space, and terrible that I can't remember, but coming up with several descriptions that organized and shared with through business eyes what the moms did at home. And if they were good at cooking, to be able to say, great cook, produced variety of foods, driven health conscious wise over the past blah 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 blah, however long. And it was amazing to see the results. First of all, the way that people in the human resources read these, these people would come back to me and say, oh my gosh, Coach Les, I can't believe it. I'm like, what? They want me to come back. They were like so blown away at my time blocking and the way that I do time and events and how I plan things, my schedule. And they took a look at my schedule on my computer and went, wow. And they said, this is what we need, organizational development. We need somebody to monitor our time. And I tell you what, I was thrilled. And I still am thrilled today, because it is such a powerful conversation. And I am so proud to have been able to lift up women to a whole new level a whole new space of understanding. And so with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Sujata. And Sujata, if you want to pass it to the people on the audience, I will be right back. I hand the mic over to you.
Okay. So I think what Coach Les has done, is recognizing what women do every day of their lives, and it just goes unnoticed. But there is a workforce out there which is not paid, and those are the housewives, is something I've been talking for a very long time. However, when we come to compromise, and when we come to the relationship, it's mostly one sided in a large part of the globe and in many societies. And that's been my learning, that's been my observation for all these years. So I would be happy to hear from Elissa or from Janet if you would like to share more on this.
I have started from experience, from almost direct experience, being a watcher of someone who could have been definitely the breadwinner, but because of the norm, not today's norm, but back in the 50s and before that, when men went to work, women stayed at home, women raised children. That's how my family is. My father and my mom's choice to do that. So we, being educated, but she has also a nurse, a great nurse, but she had a first home, and they wanted us to be cared for by them, nobody else. And for that, you sacrifice to say your career thrown out the window. I mean, she can keep it on her, and today she keeps up with their license work. She will go back to work once because my dad broke his leg. Scaffolding fell, and a fat man fell on him, broke his leg. But that was for a brief time. I was like 9 or so, and we had, it was just, however long it takes for her leg to get back together. She went and worked in a jail as a nurse. I remember, it was second shift, whatever the night shift is. So it was kind of rough, but it was fine. And I watched my dad go from nothing to something, to a war hero, to a husband, to a very successful person in a craft that he's very successful in it. So it's hard to see so much difference but my closest friends were like that too. I mean, the dad went to work, the mom stayed home and watched all the kids. They may have had a side business or, but I don't know, somehow they got through it. They must have had caretakers before that, but they had bigger families. I have a very small family, so we had to do it tight quarters. But now I don't get it nowadays. But I guess it's because of all the divorce that takes place. I think that has a humongous factor in everything. I think that's why women stepped up to the table and said we have to have more power. And I don't know, if someone once wrote a book, I remember years ago, saying okay, we need a seat at the table, at the top of the table. And she wrote a book called Lean In, and it really made an effect on women's, meaning they needed just as much power, and that the fight for equal pay I do believe that is somewhat true. That's a different controversial matter. It depends on what the job is, but I could go into a whole spiel about that. But that's my take on it, and from what I see, it works. My parents have been married over 50 years, and they're still trucking, so I don't know. That's all I have to say. I forget if there was something else, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there were different times, and over the years, people evolve relations. But I think it boils down to adjustments, compromises, and an understanding between two people. And there's a division of labor, and neither has to feel that they're doing something better than the other. It takes every bit of it to complement each other. I mean, if you look at it that way, then I think things would be different. What do you say, Janet?
I totally agree.
Right, Elisa?
I totally agree. Yes, and Melissa covered a lot of great points on that and how the relationship evolved. Because of the different jobs or the different income and the way that it evolved. She kind of covered that all, and it is so true. Even in today, even when you read your book, Sujata, I mean, you could have been a private investigator. You could have been you practically did a lot. You had a lot of skill in order to do what you did in that book to advocate for your daughter and for your family, and you continually do that. So you have this skill that has value that women have learned to monetize over the years. In the United States, women just weren't stay-at-home moms. They weren't just cleaning and cooking. They were board members of city committees, school committees, PTAs. And so they were gaining this skill that were helping them in making decisions and organizing and managing. They were doing all of that. And they learned to monetize it and get a job with that. So those are very things that women have used in order to evolve and where they are now, where they are making great income. They are very independent financially. And if they're in a relationship, one of the things Alyssa said is, looking at the divorce rate. Divorce rates are high in the United States. And the number one reason is because of finances. So when you look at that, and you think about the relationship, we talked about that, about everybody should have one account. I don't advocate for that. I advocate you have separate accounts. Unless you have a prenup that you especially have to detail everything because you want to be able to have that trust. So there's different things you want to look at in the relationship, in that they're more independent, they're making more money, they're decision makers, and they're just not staying home anymore. And many of dads, I know many dads who decided to be the one to stay home and raise the kids because the wives made good money. And it's working out fantastic. Let me tell you, the dads are awesome at organizing the home, taking care of. So they have stepped up to the plate. They have evolved, and they have a skill set that they use, and they go on do what the women used to do when they were staying at home. They serve on committees. They're doing the multitasking. They're just not staying at home, cleaning and cooking and taking care of the kids. They're being active in their communities. They're active as leaders. They're not losing any value in their abilities and their skills. It's just changed a little, and a lot of the decisions that are made about who does what or the role has to be a communication in the relationship. Okay, now it's just people. We're going to pass the mic back to you, Sujata.
Thank you. And yes, you pointed out some things which I sometimes forget, but it's there that some we do such a lot of it, and sometimes it's not even discussed. It's just that it goes with the flow. Like when I have been a housewife, so it's not that I've not cooked, cleaned, shop, done everything. Then I decided to pursue my career, so it went. The role got more developed or more. What should I say? Elongated. I had more responsibilities to manage the home as well as to manage a career. And then, like you said, I fought for justice. Now, that is a question very rarely people ask me, but some have asked me that did how was it that I, out of the two partners, decided to, do that. I think it was never really discussed. It just happened in the sense that I just knew that I would do it, and that point of time we didn't discuss it. And obviously we knew that my husband had to keep on working for his living, and court cases are something which takes a lot of time, effort, and money to go through with it, emotional space to financial space. So I just knew that I would be the one doing it. It was not something that we sat and discussed and came to a conclusion. It just We just knew who had to do what. So I guess that, yes, that's how it happens. That we keep evolving in our roles and responsibilities, and sometimes things are said and discussed, and sometimes they are not. It's just we just know what to do, when to do, at times, if that makes any sense.
I think that makes clear sense because you're knowing that you're stepping up and doing equal responsibility because I think people need to serve each other equal partnership, meaning a man doesn't do everything. Like nobody wants to be I don't want to be some sugar baby. I want to be like a half of haven't been married yet. Who knows if I will, but I know that when I am married, I want to be an equal. I'm not looking for a handout, and I want something like that, like something that doesn't even have to be spoken. If it happened to just be like that, like the man happens to not make as much money. Like I know I have close friends that one was a PA and one was he wasn't he's like some kind of medical technician in the hospital, and she would be doing surgery and he'd be like her like an assistant, and they have a beautiful marriage and like 3 kids now, and it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. And if somebody had to go to work because they made a lot more money and had some sort of opportunity that really blessed them, where the female had that chance to go, and it just didn't make sense, and they wanted their children to be looked after by them, I would want my husband at home. I'm sorry, I just think it's like, unspoken is even better because you're along the same lines, but communication is always very important. So that's my take on that.
It's great, Alyssa. Thanks. And didn't Michelle get a chance to share?
No.
Michelle, do you want to jump in? Is your beagle behaving enough? Okay, she may have stepped away from her phone. Dawn, how would you like to chime in?
Very, very humbly, I was just kind of getting the gist of the topic of the conversation.
Can you get a little closer to your mic, Dawn? We can barely hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Is that better, Sujata? Can you?
Better?
No, it's still a little faint.
It's still very quiet, Dawn. It's kind of like you're a long ways away from your mic.
Okay. Let me see.
Are you on?
Okay, how about that?
Ha! Yes, you're in the room.
Okay, all righty.
So
I realized I had my Bluetooth on and I had, well, anyway, I'll know how to do that next. Okay, so glad y'all can hear me. I decided just to listen for a little while just to get the gist of the topic of the conversation about,
I can share with you the main question if you'd like.
please do.
All right, hold on. Let me just make sure I say it correctly. It is. Give me 2 seconds now. I already reset there it is. Men and their relationships as husbands and significant others, and their role when it comes to work. So sharing, and this is once again sharing the areas of training and development that are pertinent to today's business, family, faith. And the order that seems to be the most empowering, depending on what faith you are, is faith, family, business. And looking at speaking through all of it with integrity. And as you can see, one of the things that we're wrestling with here, that to me it's not a wrestle, because my wife makes more money than I do. So if she needs me to cook her a meal and bring it to work, guess what? I'm going to cook her a meal and bring it to work. So it's, and when she started a new position just recently, I showed up because I had not made some celery juice. So the first morning she was there, I showed up with fresh flowers from the garden and fresh squeezed celery juice at about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I grew up in a different situation. Both of my parents were working. I was born in the 70s, and I remember there was a certain season where we were voting for President Ford and President Jimmy Carter, and there was a big, huge depression that happened. But it didn't hit our family as hard, mainly because my mother suffered a lot of abuse as a child, and she became an emancipated adult. Imagine that, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a huge, large, very hostile city. And she learned how to fight for herself and fend for herself at the age of 14. Then she was able to, by the grace of God, get her license and her education as an LPN. And so when my father happened to work for Lawyers Co-op, which was a company that was making fairly good money back then, enough for him to buy a boat and a 2-story house, and we moved into the suburbs of Ohio, and then all of a sudden Dad's job folded. And Mom at first was a stay-at-home mom because she wanted to stay at home, take care of us until we got at least into grade school, and then maybe she'd work a little bit until we got out of school, but it didn't work out that way. So she, stepped in, and, we got to observe how parents would, get down, lady. Sorry, I have a Cocker Spaniel at my house. Little puppy. But so we got a chance to see both sides. There was a point where Dad was breadwinner, and a point where my mom was the breadwinner. And we would see how they would both, out of, necessity is the mother of all inventions, So a lot of people say that, and there's a lot of truth to that. So when she was working, started working in the school system, and while Dad was working a bunch of different jobs, and sometimes Dad was earning more, sometimes Mom was earning more, and it really triggered us children to say, hey, if we want if there are some wants that we have, why don't I go out? And then at the age of 9, I started riding a bike and then started a paper route. And Mom, she taught me, she said, look, anything can happen to your husband. So you need to learn you need the skills to learn how to work. And then if you work and do it well, guess what? They'll pay you a little bit extra. So if I had a paper route, I learned, and she took me to the bank. And they're like, what is this little girl doing here at Farmers and Merchant State Bank? I'm showing her about a savings account so she can go to youth camp with the rest of the church kids. And if she wants to go to band camp, then she can work for it and get that. And she can know how to pay her tithes. And she trained me and my sister saying, look, everything you want, even if you do marry your husband, it shouldn't be all on him for you to get everything that you need and everything that you want. Be resourceful. And I think every woman needs to understand and have mercy. Just as God has mercy on us, we need to have mercy on our husbands. And understanding that, it is not their responsibility to give us God shall supply all my need according to his riches and glory. And even though the husband does it, we're supposed to help. Not speaking less of all the work that goes on into household chores. Because once you set foot in that other person's shoes, once Dad said, okay, I'm laid off, and he had to step in my mom's shoes, cooking and cleaning and sweeping. And he didn't care for it. But Mom said, now that I have a job, and the burden of the mortgage and the utilities and all that, and they switched roles for a minute, and then they began to appreciate each other, and said, look, we need to work together to make it. If you get off earlier, maybe you can help the kids with their homework. If you get off earlier, maybe you can cook, and they began to really work together, because they were at the point of divorce at one point, because they were used to having, and then plus having a whole bunch of extra wants, having all their needs and their wants met. And then they went to say, maybe, hopefully by the end of the month, we can have our needs met. And so switching roles sometimes really helps people to see the value in the other person's contribution. But I thank God that it was a struggle when I was little, but everybody always wanted to come to our house because we had fruit trees, or we had needs, and we had things that children could learn that they didn't get to learn at their house. You have a bank account, and we were probably the poorest people, in our community. We didn't look. We looked wealthy because she taught us to work with our hands. If you want a playhouse, build one. Here's some leftover lumber. If you want fruit, plant a fruit tree. If you want to go to band camp, if you want to play a sport, get on your bike and do your paper route, babysit, do a little extra, whatever you do, whatever work you do it with excellence. And then people will hire you again. But the value of work, whether it's sweeping the floor inside or outside of the house, everybody saw value in it because they got to see both Mom and Dad have a chance to do it. So I could go on and on, but I'll rest my mic there.
That's awesome, Dawn. Thank you so much. And with that, let's pass the mic over to Hardeep. Hardeep, it's so great to see you. How are you? Uh-oh, if you're trying to come off of mute, Hardeep, you are not succeeding. The little button is still there. All right. Well, if you're able to step out of the room and step back in, Hardeep, we would love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Diane. Diane, how are you tonight?
Hello, good evening all.
Hi.
Hi, Diane.
I'm doing good. Okay.
my family, I am legally blind. I call it a superpower now. I was born without an iris, and that's called aniridia. I also have an identical twin sister that was born the same way. And then I also have an older brother that's 7 years older. So my parents, they both had to work because me and my sister, with our disability, it was very, I guess because we couldn't get insurance for us. So growing up, it was very expensive. So because of what my dad made for a living, they couldn't get insurance for us. So my mom had to work too, and they both worked. And my grandmother, on my dad's side of the family, his mom, would watch us while they both worked. And my mom and dad, they owned their own business. So they worked their butts off. They didn't even have people working for them. They did it all on their own. So that's the way my family was. Thank you.
Diane, thank you. Everybody, it's very interesting to hear the stories. No one story is more heartstringing than another. They all so far have their heartstring attached as we've heard the shares so far. And I'm taking a moment right now just to acknowledge those of you that have shared. Thank you. Thank you for sharing information that isn't necessarily commonly shared. We appreciate it. And we appreciate everything, including, all of the stuff that continues to go on that we learn from. And I think that's the big thing is that, today, if you're listening on replays or coming in live, that we learn from our mistakes, that we take on using this opportunity for training and development. So thank you for sharing, Diane. With that, Hardeep, I saw you stepped out of the room. Is your mic up and working?
Can you hear me, Coach?
Beautiful.
Well, Coach, how's it been? How's it going with you and Sujata and everybody in the room? I've been off. I'm working in the field now, so I made some mistakes, Coach, and I'm back in the field. So, when people talk about, what we learned from our family and what we saw as working, I learned that, hard work was it, and I thought to myself, when I went into construction and owning my own business, that I would be, I would make it. But in the recent little while, I made some mistakes, and now I'm back in working for someone else to make ends meet. And I don't think they're mistakes. I think what, I learned along the way, what I wish I paid more attention to my parents, was that I wanted to make sure that, I was on top of the world. I think that's what, coming from where I did, I wanted to prove a point, but along the way, proving a point caused me some serious mistakes. And I guess now those mistakes have caused me to what they call is a regroup and tried to bring the business back to where it was supposed to be. And, you know, when we look at it, I try to tell my kids that nowadays. I tell my boys, I've been trying to tell them that, you know, when one falls, the other one should come and help. But, you know, it's been that story of mine where I've been doing it on my own. So I haven't really had that help when we call about help about, you know, the spouse, because mine passed away. But along the way, I've always done it on my own. But I guess today, working in the field again back in as safety professional, it's not where I want. It's not where I want to be, but this is where I have to be in order to, you know, save my house and, you know, and bring back some sort of stability back into my life. So I've been on I think 1 month, I've been working 1 month straight, and to bring the bills back and to pay off the bills and the debt that I incurred. And my learning curve would be today is that I wish I learned from my parents. I wish I learned from my adopted parents. I wish I learned the skill set that they had, where they were saving money and how they did it.
Yes.
Because today I'm more in the boat where I gave, and I didn't look. And that's, you know, the parents of the old days, the old country, are the ones that I wish I had paid attention to. And today I'm regrouping and learning what finances mean at my age, almost hitting 50. I'm trying to learn how to regroup as a single woman, as a single mother, or as a business owner. I'm learning to regroup and to reinvest into myself. So I've been away, and now was my first time back. So, and that's what's been going on, and that's what's happened. So I'm Ardeep, and I'm done speaking.
Well, let me be the first to say I'm super proud of you. And I want to
Thanks, Coach.
And I want to let that sink in. That's why I didn't follow it up with anything. And somebody might be asking, why are you super proud of Hardeep for that? Because in today's society, in the United States at least, it's very easy to get knocked down and run to the government with your hands out. And there are many groups that are out there that will come to the rescue. And what I find in what you shared, Hardeep, was, one, you did what you had to do. Two, you did learn the lessons from your parents to just get back to work, put the boot, grab the bootstraps, pull them up, and start walking again. And I think this has become a lost art all over the world. I think so many governments enjoy the control they have by allowing their populations to feed off of them when they're down. And there's this thing called tough love, which I believe makes a tremendous amount of difference. And does it get abused sometimes? Of course it does. Welcome to the human race. What I want to say, though, is to hear your journey, Hardeep, and to hear your commitment. I'm super proud of you, and I'm glad I know you.
Well, Coach, I appreciate that. It's a journey that, I started, I thought I would never take. I'll be honest. Like, a lot of people said, Hardeep, why are you doing this? Because, You put your house up, you put everything in that you put everything into the construction side, and it didn't happen. And I said, well, let me tell you guys, it will happen. It's a dream, that I had and I still have, that I'm fighting for. But along the way, Coach, I think, when you become, I think it becomes, you feel like you're untouchable, and you're coming into these new markets, and and you got all these people around you. But now I've learned that over time I've become touchable. Not touchable by God's grace, not with health or anything else, but I'm touchable with work, and I'm touchable because I'm just like everyone else. And along the way, I forgot that I'm also human, and that along the way I could fall. I just never knew that I was going to fall so early. So it's a huge learning curve for me. I don't like doing 14 hours in the field. I don't like listening to people. I don't like having a boss, but I do have a boss, and it's a field that I never thought I would venture into again. But I made that decision after sitting down in an empty house and looking around and knowing that one day foreclosure is starting. To save my house and save my sanity, I had to do it. I don't think the government would help me on this one. Even if I wanted them to, they wouldn't help me on this one. It was
I have been informed by the Holy Spirit that freaking Liz is actually.
Sorry about that, Heidi.
No, that's okay, Coach. I was just saying that, I think it's something that I'm teaching my kids now too, that it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, where you come from, what your thoughts are, and what you think the world is. But at the end of the day, work ethic, being human, believing that you're human, and being humble is one of the glories to being in salvation, to where I'm at today. So I know I really, really am grateful that you said that, and very sincerely appreciative.
Yeah. And, and I think here's the thing. I think that one of the things you've demonstrated that I think is a powerful opportunity for everybody, right, is how many people out there, both women and men, are working in a job for the simple reason that they need a paycheck. They need to keep food on the table. They got to have transportation. They've got to get their children to school. All of these things. And I think part of the responsibility that I see here in this, and part of the whole game inside of this, as we're going through this today, is oftentimes, there are things that we don't know about families, and we can't see them because we don't know the inner workings. And then people make these judgments and assessments. Now, yes, I know we all judge and we all assess. When it comes to the snap ones, where they come up and say, well, how come you're not staying at home with your kids? Why are you going to work? Why are you and your husband working? Any number of what I would call righteous questioning without understanding, and as opposed to coming in and saying, what's going on? How can we support you? What can we do to lift you up with the rest of us? Instead, what happens is the slanderous poop. And I find it's one of the things that I find very disconcerting to realize that people in times of hardship, a lot of times become polarized in a negative way versus coming together and grabbing a hand and going, come on, let's get up together. Let's lift. Let's work. And the way that being that powerfully connected to what's possible makes so much more available. That's what I'm excited about. So I just want to welcome a couple people, Daniela and Jelry, to the room. Sujata, did you want to chime in?
Yeah. What I wanted to tell Hardeep was that, I think that in the journey, and if we look at the journey, which is very important, the so called word mistakes are actually situations of learning. There are no mistakes, there are situations from which we learn. And reflecting on what we have missed out, like learning from our parents or learning from others, and knowing that, we could have done this and we could have done that. It just brings us back to something that we missed in the learning, and we can again follow it up. And that, I think, is what's been happening with you. And that's really great because, we learn all the time. The moment we stop learning is when we literally uh, die as characters. You know, you might be alive and existing, but you may not be actually living, because to live, you have to continuously evolve. That makes sense. And yes, Hardeep, even I'm proud of you. I mean, I think that there is no age which stops us. There is no, a situation that, okay, you can't do this now, or you should have done this before. We can always continue to do whatever best that we can. And you're doing that. So you will inspire others with the actions that you take.
Woo woo. Awesome, awesome. All right, let's see. There's a hand raised, and I'm not sure. Let's see if I can pull it up. Hey, Jelry, come on up. Jeanette, did you want to chime in on any of this?
Oh gosh, I think everything was covered that I was going to say. The only thing I was going to say with the one that was doing construction and now has to work for someone else. You know what? That's not a failure. That's part of learning. That's something that's going to propel you forward. So I just want to keep encouraging them. Just keep going toward your dream. That's the only thing. But everything was covered. I mean, we covered so much. It's just amazing. What a great conversation. Thank you for opening this up.
You're very welcome. And Jelry's up on stage. Hi, Jelry. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Jel?
Yes, you are. You pronounced it perfectly. Unfortunately, I'm on the bus getting home. But this is an interesting topic, because I've been feeling in the couple of weeks like I haven't lived up to my full potential, and I guess you said against all, no matter what the odds or the obstacles in your life, there's still a chance, there's still more that you can do, that God has, even if it seems like God has passed you by, He will always come back around. Even if you haven't done what He's called you to do, I just feel that He will find some other way to get you to where you need to be. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. I mean, everything's predestined. It's already out there. And I think what is great is we don't allow any of the noise in our mind that comes, of course, from self-doubt, which is all the conversations from the enemy in the, in I would say in the faith world. And to be able to, when you fall, to be able to get up knowing that you're going to fall again, and to get up again and knowing that you're going to fall again. And each time you fall, you start to see that every time you fall, you grow. And sometimes the growth may not be monetary. Sometimes the growth may be frustrating and not be the way that you'd like to grow. And I challenge each and every person, in this room, to the next time they fall, to smile and to be able to look and say, oh my goodness, I'm learning. And to see it as part of this amazing journey that we get to go on.
Yeah, Coach, what's that saying? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Woohoo! Yes. Yeah.
And, I did know one thing I wanted to touch upon was when we're talking about who takes what role.
Yep.
The great thing about that is they're looking and using each other's strengths. So when you're in a relationship and you're deciding what you're going to do, if you're taking advantage of using the person's strengths, wow, that's how it is. When we were talking about Sujata and how the role she took on as an advocate, and all the decisions she made in the action she took and the role she took, she was utilizing her strengths. And I think we didn't touch upon that, about how you utilize your strength. And sometimes that's telling you the best decision you're making for your role in your life and any relationship. Thank you for letting me share.
I love it. That's great, Jeanette. And I think, for me as a man who has had my ego sandpapered quite a bit over the past couple of decades, I look now and think, you know what? All the money is and this is from my aspect. All money is God's money anyway. It all belongs to Him anyway. So we get to play with it for a little bit while we're here. And we get to manage it for a little bit while we're here. And I did a terrible job of managing money when I was growing up. I mean, I started working when I was 11. I was listening to, and I think it was Dawn that started with a paper route. Same thing. 11 years old, I was doing a paper route. And I look at all this and I think, I spent every penny I made, sometimes faster than I made it. And I didn't value money. And I now look, and it's not that I value money. I now look at it as what money can provide for the people around me and the difference I can make with money. And if it's meant to be in my pocket to share, or meant to be in a building mode, for me to support somebody else building, for me to step back, make less money and support somebody that's making more money, even in my businesses, and even as the 24-hour Bible study, to trust God and let God is something that has been a true lesson in humility, in patience. And I think that if more men could set their egos aside, the difference that could be made in this world is it's exciting. And I'm excited. So with that, Sujata, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up? And for those of you, we'll be back tomorrow night. Friday night, we come together. And for Sujata, it's Saturday morning. And so we start a little later. And we watch a sermon. And I think tomorrow I'm gonna play a few things from some sermons that I've heard, and I think it'll be tomorrow night's gonna be interesting because we're gonna take it into the bedroom. Sujata's eyes just went up and opened wide, Jeanette. Because I think that and we won't stay in there all the time. I just think that there's something to be said for how do we as men honor our significant other. How do we do this in a way that it is not a mandatory, obligatory, negative impact? How do we bring a new level of integrity, of warmth, compassion, grace, and ease into the physical part of a relationship? And how do we restore that integrity that for millennia has often been abused due to the strength, muscular wise sometimes, of a man? So I'm excited. Sujata just sat down and adjusted her glasses. And this is going to be, I think tomorrow's going to be interesting. Are you ready for that, Jeanette?
I I guess so. I will see. I mean, I wish I could see the reaction of Sujata because that tells me how interesting it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, you'll be able to because it's on Facebook and LinkedIn.
So true. So true. Maybe I'll watch the replay just so I can get to that point in time to see her reaction. She's got a big grin going on. Oh boy. Here we go. Awesome. Well, thank you all, everybody. Thank you for being here. We want to thank you for joining us today. We'll look forward to tomorrow. I'm super excited. Hopefully you can all make it, even if it's only for a little while. And if you can't make it and you can take a listen to the replay, you can fast forward over the parts you don't want to listen to, or you can, hit replay and go, I can't believe they were talking about that. So I might put a little disclaimer in the description to have people be aware so that they don't walk in on a particular word and then go, yikes. So thank you all once again. I see. Thanks, Robert, for stopping by. I'm sorry we're closing. Michael, we're closing up. Jelry, thanks so much for being here. Hardeep, so great to see you. Look forward to seeing you again. Dawn, thank you for so much coming up on stage and sharing. Sister Jeanette, always. And with that, I'm going to do a little closeout music just because.